I'm slowly beginning to grasp the full weight of what I did to you, and the more I reflect on it, the more deeply I feel the impact of my actions. For the longest time, I moved through the situation with a kind of numbness, convincing myself that my choices were justified or necessary. But with distance and quiet, clarity has finally begun to settle in, and I can now see how deeply I must have hurt you. I've recently come to understand just how excruciating it is to love someone who doesn't return your feelings, to open yourself up completely only to be met with rejection or dismissal. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from giving someone a part of your heart and having them act as though it never existed at all. It makes you question your worth, your judgment, and even your sense of reality. And what's worse is when the person you love doesn't simply turn you down, they deny the meaning of everything that happened, pretending the connection was insignificant or imagined. That's exactly what I did to you, and acknowledging that now fills me with a level of regret I can barely put into words. Even though I knew how you felt about me, I chose to walk away. I didn't just reject your feelings, I refused to acknowledge them at all. I made you feel as though the moments we shared, the conversations we had, the vulnerability you offered so openly, meant nothing. I can only imagine the kind of confusion and hurt that must have caused you. At the time, I justified my silence, my withdrawal, and my dismissal by telling myself I was overwhelmed or unprepared. But none of those excuses diminish the pain I caused. It's painful now to admit it, but I understand in a much clearer way how much I hurt you by failing to treat your heart with the respect, seriousness, and consideration it deserved. What has made all of this even more difficult for me is your silence now. For so long, I took your presence, your openness, and your willingness to communicate for granted. I never imagined a time when you wouldn't be there, when your voice wouldn't be accessible to me, when your energy and attention would no longer fill the space between us. Now, with you completely withdrawn and choosing not to speak to me, I feel the void I once forced you into. The silence that surrounds me mirrors the exact silence I imposed on you when I blocked you, ghosted you, and cut off all communication. At the time, I thought I was doing what I had to do, protecting myself, creating distance, avoiding discomfort. But I didn't take a single moment to consider how you must have felt on the receiving end of that sudden disappearance. I didn't think about the confusion I was leaving you with, the questions I knew you couldn't ask, or the answers I refused to give. Now that the roles are reversed, I feel the sting with a sharpness that pierces deeper than I expected. Your silence has become a harsh lesson, one that has forced me to see myself from your perspective. It has made me realize how deeply you must have felt the abandonment, the uncertainty, and the disorienting pain of being ignored by someone you cared about. I get it now in a way I never could have understood before. The emptiness, the longing for closure, the desire to understand what went wrong, all of those feelings have settled in my chest, and they have made me painfully aware of what I put you through. And as difficult as this realization is, I know it's one I needed to face. I understand now that actions have lasting consequences, and mine created wounds I can never fully take back. But there is something else I need to tell you, something I hope you will allow yourself to hear, even if you never respond to me again. None of what happened was because of you. It wasn't your fault, not for a single moment. You did nothing wrong. You weren't lacking, you weren't too much, and you weren't misreading the situation. You showed me love, loyalty, consistency, and honesty. You approached me with sincerity, with softness, and with a level of emotional courage that I didn't recognize at the time for the gift it truly was. You were exactly who you should have been, and there was absolutely nothing about you that needed to change. The truth, the one I avoided facing for so long, is that I was the one who wasn't ready. I was consumed by my own insecurities, fears, and unresolved issues. I was caught up in my own self-protection, too afraid to accept something real, something vulnerable, something I didn't feel I fully deserved. I couldn't see the value of what you were offering because I wasn't in the right emotional space to receive it. Looking back, I realize how selfish and short-sighted I was. I was so wrapped up in my own internal chaos that I couldn't recognize your love for what it was, genuine, patient, and rare. I'm embarrassed to admit it now, but I wasn't worthy of your love then. Not because I was inherently flawed or unlovable, but because I didn't have the emotional maturity to handle something so sincere. I was too focused on myself, too arrogant, too blinded by my own ego to see the truth unfolding right before me. I didn't understand the depth of your words or the sincerity behind your feelings. I didn't see how much trust you placed in me or how vulnerable it must have felt for you to express that trust openly. You were giving me your loyalty, your honesty, your affection, and I completely failed to appreciate it. I couldn't see how much you were offering because I refused to look beyond my own fears. The more I reflect, the more painful it becomes to acknowledge how selfish I truly was. I acted in ways that protected me, but wounded you. I chose what was easy instead of what was right. I avoided the responsibility of acknowledging your feelings because doing so would have required me to confront parts of myself I wasn't prepared to face. If I had known then what I know now, everything would have been different. I would have listened more carefully. I would have communicated openly instead of disappearing. I would have taken your feelings seriously instead of brushing them aside. I would have given your heart the gentleness and respect it deserved. But hindsight always arrives too late, offering clarity only after the damage has already been done. And now I'm left with the understanding of what I lost, not just a connection, but the chance to treat someone who cared for me with the kindness and maturity they deserved. I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm not expecting forgiveness, reconciliation, or even a response. I know I don't have the right to expect anything after the way I acted. But I do hope, with time, you might be able to forgive me, not for my sake, but for your own peace. I know I will carry the weight of my actions with me, and I accept that. The remorse I feel is something that has forced me to grow, to confront who I was, and to understand how my behavior affected someone who never intended to hurt me. More than anything, I wanted to tell you all of this so you would know that it was never your fault. You didn't imagine the connection. You weren't foolish for caring. You weren't wrong for expressing your feelings. You gave me everything, your trust, your affection, your openness, and I wasn't ready to receive it. I failed to understand the depth of what you were offering, and that is something I will always regret. But please know this, your love was never wasted. It revealed truths about me that I needed to confront, and it has changed the way I understand myself and the way I want to show up in relationships moving forward. I see things clearly now, more clearly than I ever have, and although understanding comes too late to undo the past, I'm grateful for what it has taught me. Your presence in my life, however brief or complicated, left an imprint I won't forget. I will always carry the regret of not recognizing your worth in the moment, and I will always wish I had been brave enough to meet your love with the honesty and respect it deserved. But even if nothing else comes from this, I needed you to know the truth. You weren't the problem. You weren't the reason things fell apart. It was me, my fear, my immaturity, my inability to face my own emotions. Thank you for what you gave me, even though I didn't know how to receive it. Thank you for caring, even when I made it difficult. And thank you, most of all, for showing me a kind of sincerity that I didn't appreciate at the time but now understand far more deeply. I'm truly sorry for everything.